Good morning and welcome to the deep dive. We have a lot to cover today, and as always, we really hope you'll comment below with your thoughts and questions. It's April 9th, and we are going to be diving into the world of trading card games today, looking at some recent happenings across Pokemon, Lorcana Magic the Gathering, and One Piece. You know you've shared your curiosity with us, and we're here to unpack what stands out in these dynamic spaces.
Absolutely, yeah. It's quite a snapshot we have today, touching on everything from market fluctuations to kind of these evolving game strategies
Right.
across these different communities. And what's striking is how each game, while sharing that core appeal of collecting and playing, operates under its own unique set of pressures and excitements.
Yeah, let's start with Pokemon. There's been a lot of talk about card values. And it's been interesting to see how they're behaving not always in lockstep with the broader economic trends that we might expect. It seems like some are even viewing Pokemon as a surprisingly resilient kind of asset.
Yeah, that's a really insightful starting point. What we're observing with the stability of some Pokemon products. And this is a pattern we see across other hobby markets that involve tangible goods, is that there's a potential delay in how they respond to wider economic shifts. Collectors often have a longer-term perspective, and the immediate price of a sought-after card or a sealed box might not be as directly tied to short-term economic news compared to, more speculative investments.
That makes sense. Specifically, the Scarlet and Violet booster boxes seem to be maintaining a pretty steady price point around that $200 mark. Even the special Elite Trainer boxes, the ETBs, aren't showing significant drops. That feels like a strong indicator of ongoing interest.
It does. It suggests a consistent base level of enthusiasm for the current kind of flagship series. And the fact that even those higher-end sealed products are holding their value points to a healthy and engaged collector base.
Now, some of those really hyped secret rare and illustration rare cards that saw those initial big price spikes, it looks like they've come down a bit.
Yeah.
But the feeling is that this is just a normal part of the market finding its level, right?
Precisely what's interesting to consider here is the natural cycle we often see. Initial excitement and limited early supply can create a surge in prices for certain chase cards. However, as more of that supply enters the market through openings and trades, and as that initial frenzy cools slightly, we often see a price correction which can contribute to a more sustainable long-term market.
And it seems like the general consensus is that the average person spending on their Pokemon hobby isn't as immediately impacted by stock market dips as one might assume. It's like the joy of the hobby provides a bit of a buffer.
Yeah, that raises a fascinating point about discretionary spending. For many engaging with hobbies, like Pokemon offers a form of entertainment, a sense of community, and even a bit of nostalgia. These are intrinsic values that might be less easily replaced or cut back on, compared to other forms of spending when economic times get a little uncertain.
Now, the big question mark that keeps coming up is around the print runs and potential reprints of sets like 151. You hear some people convinced there's more coming, while others think what's out there now might be it. That uncertainty really shapes how people view the current and future value, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Scarcity, or the perception of it, is a fundamental driver in the collectibles market. If a set is believed to have a limited production run, demand can be amplified as collectors anticipate future rarity. Conversely, the expectation of significant reprints can temper prices, as the potential for increased availability looms. The ambiguity around 151's production is definitely creating some interesting dynamics.
And then we have Journey Together. It's being closely analyzed. And it seems those gold rare cards in the set might be exceptionally rare, with some reports suggesting maybe only one per case. That sounds like a big deal for those chasing those specific cards.
It does highlight how even within a single set, the varying pull rates and rarities of individual cards can lead to significant differences in their perceived value. The apparent scarcity of those gold rares is likely driving their individual prices, even if the overall average pull value from a Journey Together booster box hasn't consistently exceeded the manufacturer's suggested retail price.
Right, because the overall booster box value for Journey Together has at times dipped below that MSRP based on what people are actually pulling. It's a good reminder that not every card in a set is going to be a top dollar hit.
Exactly, the expected return on investment, or at least the perceived value of the cards you're likely to get from opening a booster box, is always a key consideration for both casual openers and those who might be looking to trade or resell. When that expected value doesn't consistently meet or exceed the cost of the box, it can influence overall demand for the sealed product.
Looking ahead, there's already buzz about the Destined Rivals set. Opinions seem divided on how it might perform compared to recent sets like Journey Together. It's like everyone's trying to get a peek into the future of the market.
That kind of forward-looking speculation is a constant in the TCG hobby. Players and collectors are always trying to anticipate which upcoming sets will feature the most desirable cards, have the biggest impact on competitive play, and ultimately hold the most value over time. It's a combination of analyzing past trends, scrutinizing the announced card list, and gauging the overall community excitement.
And those promotional cards, like some of the ones released alongside the 151 set, they're starting to gain recognition for their potential long-term value, particularly if their initial scarcity was underestimated. It's those unexpected gems that can sometimes become highly sought after.
Precisely. Sometimes cards that don't generate immediate hype can appreciate significantly in value over the long haul. This can be due to unique artwork limited distribution, or perhaps they become surprisingly relevant in competitive play later on. Those 151 promotional cards could very well fit into that category.
Now, the whole conversation around MSRP in the Pokemon world is fascinating. Some argue it's almost irrelevant because the actual selling price is rarely that, and online marketplaces are really the ones dictating the perceived value. Plus, with the issue of counterfeit products, buying from trusted sources is so important. It's a complex situation.
You've touched on several key aspects there. Manufacturers suggested retail price often serves more as a benchmark than a fixed price in the TCG market, especially for high-demand items. Online marketplaces have certainly increased accessibility, but they've also introduced more price volatility and, unfortunately, the risk of encountering counterfeit goods. It really underscores the importance for buyers to be informed and to purchase from reputable sellers.
And just to cap off the Pokemon discussion, there was some talk about someone potentially acquiring 2 allocations of a super premium collection, which just highlights the intense demand for those top-tier limited edition items. People really go after those.
Yeah, those super premium collections often contain exclusive and highly desirable content, making them prime targets for serious collectors and investors alike. The fact that securing even a single allocation can be difficult speaks volumes about the demand and the potential value associated with them.
All right, let's shift our focus now to Disney Lorcana. It sounds like the game is continuing to evolve both in terms of the competitive scene and the values of the cards.
Yeah, that's the natural trajectory for any new trading card game as players experiment with different deck building approaches and uncover powerful card synergies. The competitive landscape, what we call the meta shifts, and the demand for specific cards adjusts accordingly.
The card Diablo Devoted Herald is consistently holding above that $30 mark. That suggests it's a pretty crucial card in some of the top-performing decks right now.
That sustained higher price strongly indicates that Diablo Devoted Herald is a key component in successful deck strategies in the current Lorcana environment. Its abilities, likely something that provides significant in-game advantage, make it a highly sought-after card for competitive players.
And the Maleficent Uninvited Cold Foil cards are selling for around $10, but the Enchanted Rare version is significantly more valuable. It's a clear illustration of how the different rarity tiers within Lorcana influence card prices, isn't it?
Absolutely. Lorcana employs different rarity levels, with enchanted rares being the most scarce. This scarcity directly translates to higher market values. While cold foil versions are still desirable and collectible, their greater availability leads to a lower price point compared to the much harder to find enchanted versions.
Interestingly, there's a feeling among some that the booster bundles are a good product because they focus solely on the packs, without the extra accessories. This potentially offers better value for those just looking to open cards.
That's a valid point of view. For players whose primary goal is to expand their card collection or chase specific cards within a set, the exclusion of items like dice or playmats in the booster bundles can indeed make them a more cost-effective way to acquire packs, compared to, say, a full booster box or other bundled products.
And it seems like there's a real anticipation building for Disney Lorcana to announce future major organized play events. People are clearly eager for more opportunities to play competitively. That makes sense, as competitive events often fuel a lot of interest and drive the meta.
Yeah, organized play is vital for the long-term health and engagement of any TCG community. Major tournaments and events provide a platform for players to test their skills, foster a sense of community, and can also significantly impact the perceived value of certain cards based on their performance in high-level play. The anticipation suggests a dedicated player base eager for more competitive outlets.
Now, here's a dramatic example of market fluctuation. The price of Rapunzel Gifted Healer has reportedly dropped from around $200 back in October to about $10 now. That's a huge swing, highlighting just how volatile single card prices can be. Although it is noted that PSA 10 graded versions can still command a much higher price.
Yeah, that sharp price decline really illustrates the potential for significant volatility. In the secondary market for trading card singles, initial hype, perhaps fueled by strong early tournament results or perceived scarcity, can drive prices to very high levels. However, as more supply enters circulation or the card's competitive relevance shifts, prices can correct quite significantly. The fact that PSA 10 graded copies still hold substantial value underscores the premium that collectors place on cards in pristine, professionally authenticated condition.
Let's move on to Magic the Gathering now. Our deep dive into the game touches on the Tarkir Dragonstorm limited format. It's always interesting to see how individual cards are evaluated specifically for drafting and sealed play.
Yeah, limited formats where you build a deck on the spot from a limited pool of cards have their own unique set of criteria for evaluating card strength. Cards that might be considered mediocre in constructed formats, where you bring your own pre-built deck, can be absolute powerhouses in limited, and vice versa, due to the constraints and opportunities of building a deck from a smaller randomized selection.
For instance, Marshal of the Lost is considered strong in decks that generate creature tokens, and generally a good playable card if you're adopting an aggressive strategy. That makes sense. It rewards a particular playstyle that's common and limited.
Exactly. The effectiveness of Marshal of the Lost is directly tied to having a critical mass of other creatures to benefit from its abilities, and a game plan focused on attacking. It's a prime example of a card whose value is highly dependent on the context of the game and the composition of your deck in a limited environment.
Then we have Auroral Procession, which is considered an excellent early pick in a draft for the card advantage it provides. And in Magic, having more cards than your opponent is almost always a good thing.
Absolutely. And limited running out of playable cards can quickly lead to defeat. Auroral Procession offers a relatively inexpensive way to put a threat on the board, while simultaneously replenishing your hand, giving you more options and increasing your chances of outlasting your opponent. That makes it a very efficient and highly desirable card to pick early in a draft.
On the other hand, Kishla Skimmer is viewed as more situational and potentially on the weaker side. It sounds like it's a card you'd only really want if your draft has gone in a very specific direction that can reliably support it.
Yeah, Kishla Skimmer's effectiveness hinges on specific conditions being met, which might not always be reliable in a limited game. Its modes of operation can easily become irrelevant if your deck doesn't have the necessary synergies. Making it a riskier pick compared to more consistently impactful cards, it's generally a card you'd prefer to avoid, unless your draft is already heavily committed to a strategy where it can shine.
Now, Fangkeeper's Familiar is highlighted as a really strong 4-mana flying creature. With the valuable added benefits of generating treasure tokens and getting a flying boost based on your graveyard, it's even considered a reason to try and draft the Sultai color combination. That's green, blue, and black in Magic.
Yeah, Fangkeeper's Familiar really embodies what you look for in a strong limited card. It provides a solid body in the air for attacking and blocking, gives you access to extra resources through to treasure tokens, and has a relevant ability that can scale in power as the game progresses and your graveyard fills up. It's the kind of versatile and impactful card that can indeed steer you towards a particular color archetype, like Sultai, which in this case is known for its graveyard synergies and value-oriented gameplay.
And these common gain lands in the set are being described as incredibly strong, making it much more feasible to play 3-color decks in the limited format.
Yeah.
That's a significant factor for ensuring you can consistently cast your spells.
Yeah, the presence of good mana fixing, especially at a common rarity, has a huge impact on how limited formats play out. The gain lands in Tarkir Dragonstorm, which enter the battlefield tapped, but also gain you a life. Not only help you cast spells multiple colors more reliably, but also provide a small buffer to your life total, making more ambitious 3-color strategies much more viable and consistent. The added bonus that enemy color combinations fit into 2 different clans, each further enhances their flexibility and value in the format.
We also got a glimpse into a gameplay transcript from the Legacy format. It's fascinating to see the intricate strategic planning involved using cards like Leyline of the Void and Beseech the Mirror to set up a game-winning Tendrils of Agony play. It's like watching a complex puzzle being solved.
Legacy is a very high-powered format, where fast, efficient, and often intricate combo strategies are prevalent. The transcript illustrates how specific cards can be used in a coordinated way to achieve a swift and decisive victory. Leyline of the Void is a powerful card that disrupts graveyard-based strategies, a common element in Legacy, while Beseech the Mirror acts as a very efficient tutor, allowing a player to find the exact card they need, in this case, the lethal Tendrils of Agony.
And the sideboarding strategies mentioned with cards like Veil of Summer Boseiju, who endures Abrupt Decay Gamble and Mox Opal, really highlight the depth of strategic thinking in competitive Magic. It's not just about having a strong main deck. What you bring in after the first game is crucial.
Sideboarding is an absolutely critical skill in competitive Magic. It allows players to adapt their game plan and bring in specific cards that are particularly effective against their opponent's strategy. The cards mentioned are all potent sideboard options that can address different threats, provide additional resilience against certain types of spells, or disrupt the opponent's key plans in various matchups.
We even have a look at a Commander format game featuring Kotus the Fang Keeper as the commander. It's interesting to see the dynamics of a multiplayer game with a unique commander, and how things like attacking, blocking commander damage, and specific card effects like exiling cards all come into play. Commander is such a different experience compared to the one-on-one formats.
Commander, being a multiplayer format centered around legendary creatures with singleton deck construction, fosters a very different kind of gameplay. The transcript illustrates the complex interactions that can arise with multiple players, each with their own commander and unique deck, leading to board states with a lot of moving pieces, and various card effects influencing the game simultaneously. Commander damage, a specific rule where dealing 21 combat damage from a single commander defeats a player, also adds another layer to combat considerations.
Cards like Mystic Snake are mentioned as potentially valuable targets for bouncing and recasting. That's the kind of clever, repeatable play that Commander often rewards.
Mystic Snake, which has the ability to counter a spell when it enters the battlefield, becomes even more powerful in Commander because there are often ways to repeatedly return creatures to your hand and then replay them, triggering their enter the battlefield abilities multiple times and creating a recurring source of disruption.
And the use of warrior tokens, created by cards like Mardu Woe Reaper, how they interact with effects that trigger when creatures attack. It's all about maximizing those synergistic interactions to gain an advantage in the long, often complex Commander games.
Yeah, creating creature tokens and then leveraging their abilities and interactions with other cards is a common and effective strategy in Commander. Mardu Woe Reaper's ability to generate warrior tokens that can then trigger other beneficial effects upon attacking demonstrates how different components of a Commander deck can work together to generate value, apply pressure to opponents, and ultimately contribute to a winning game plan.
Finally, let's turn our attention to the one-piece trading card game. It sounds like the competitive environment in tournaments is currently undergoing a shift.
Metagame shifts are a natural and expected part of any competitive trading card game. As players discover new, powerful strategies and learn how to effectively counter existing popular decks, the overall landscape of what you're likely to encounter in tournaments evolves.
There's mention of a particular archetype, likely referred to as Sapphire, being very prevalent. And as a result, players are adapting their strategies to include anti-Sapphire tactics, often focusing on using evasive, smaller characters. It's a constant back and forth in the competitive scene.
Yeah, the dominance of a particular strategy like Sapphire in a tournament environment will inevitably lead to other players developing strategies specifically designed to exploit its weaknesses or outmaneuver its strengths. Focusing on evasive, smaller characters suggests an attempt to avoid direct confrontations with whatever makes Sapphire strong, perhaps by going under it with aggressive attacks or by utilizing different kinds of card interactions that Sapphire decks might struggle to answer.
The prevalence of this Sapphire strategy in local tournaments is even described as ridiculous. That really paints a clear picture of what the current competitive scene looks like for one-piece players in those areas.
Yeah, that strong descriptor really emphasizes just how influential and dominant Sapphire strategies have become within that specific tournament scene. It highlights the pressure on players to either adopt similar strategies themselves or find effective and reliable ways to counteract them if they want to achieve success in those competitions.
So across all four of these games, Pokémon Lorcana, Magic the Gathering, and One Piece, the recurring theme really seems to be this dynamic interplay between the market value of the cards, the strategies players are using in the games themselves, the ongoing release of new sets and products, and the ever-evolving interests of the community. It's a constantly shifting ecosystem for each one.
Absolutely. The world of TCGs is a vibrant and complex web of these interconnected factors. A new set release in one game can ripple through card prices, inspire new deck archetypes, and reignite community enthusiasm, while shifts in the competitive meta of another game can drive demand for specific cards and influence how players approach deck building and tournament preparation.
We've taken a deep dive into recent developments across Pokémon Lorcana, Magic the Gathering, and One Piece today, touching on market trends, key cards, and the ever-changing landscape of gameplay. It's clear that the world of TCGs is constantly in motion, offering a lot for you to think about as you engage with your own collections and games. What stood out to you most from our discussion today? We'd love for you to share your thoughts down below in the comments.
What's particularly noteworthy is how each of these games, while sharing the fundamental appeal of collecting and strategic gameplay, has cultivated its own distinct identity and set of dynamics. From the investment considerations we see in the Pokémon market to the developing competitive scene in Lorcana, the enduring strategic depth of Magic, and the tactical shifts in the One Piece meta, there's a rich and varied tapestry of experiences within the broader TCG hobby.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. And don't forget to visit 151collectables.com for all your trading card game needs.